and welcome to Intermerge's STEM and X.
Hello, my name is Edith Lamb, and welcome to our STEM and X webinar. Before we get started, please go out, check out our second episode with Amanda if you haven't already. And today we have Caeley Looney with us today. So before we get started, I'm going to give a brief introduction of Intermerge. So yeah, let me just share my slides really quickly. So we are a global youth network working to diversify the next generation of changemakers through interdisciplinary STEMX education. Currently, we have held 250 plus free events, workshops, and programs worldwide for minority youths. And our goal is to have interdisciplinary STEMX curriculum for social good. We have three pillars that we currently kind of help and kind of create for youths. First, we have our virtual programming, which is basically our monthly fireside chats, which like this one that we have currently, and then as well as newsletters and other resources. And we also have community education. So we have in-person and impactful STEMX humanities programming for underrepresented youths, as well as our remote learning program. And we also have an incubator program where it's basically a student-driven mentorship program where we kind of cultivate launching ideas and projects. So currently we have had 7,700 plus students impacted 60 locations in 14 countries. We are a nonprofit organization and we are supported by Disney, the Hershey Company, and the Youth Service of America. Yeah, and if you want to get involved, go ahead and check out our regional directors, which is on our website, intermerge.org, newsletters, which you can definitely subscribe to, and our mentorship opportunities. So, so before we get started, how was your holiday break and what are you looking forward to in 2022, Caeley?
Man, okay, so my holiday break was a little bit crazy. I mean, you kind of run a nonprofit too, right? So the end of the year for nonprofit founders and execs is usually pretty chaotic. You're wrapping up your whole year end. I did actually get to spend a little bit of time with my family, which was weird for me because I did not see them last year because of COVID. They didn't stay too long. We really just got through Christmas and then they were gone the very next day. But I was grateful even to have that little bit of time. And the rest of it was spent prepping Reinvented to move into an office space. We're overdue to be moving out of my home office here that we've definitely outgrown. And we're really excited to be creating like an in-person volunteer home base here on the Space Coast in Florida. So that was really exciting. And 2022 has been great so far. We had some like weird IT issues at work. So I was like, it's a strong way to start the year. But I'm hoping that that's resolved tomorrow. But otherwise it's been okay.
Yeah, it's super exciting that you guys are moving to an office space and I'm hoping that goes well. So good luck with
yeah,
that.
it's like completely new to me. I know how to rent apartments and houses, and office spaces are different. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but we're pushing through and we should be moving in all of this month. So I'm really excited to like finally get the keys and like call it our own and make it official.
Yeah, that sounds super exciting. Yeah. So yeah, I'll just quickly kind of introduce you and kind of who you are and just not, yeah. So Caeley Looney is a space geek and also a Netflix binger, which I definitely can relate to, especially during winter break, and French fry lover. After graduating from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University with a BS in Aerospace Engineering, she started working full-time as a space Mission Analyst at L3Harris Technologies, where she currently supports their small satellite programs. She also is the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization called Reinvented, where she helps empower young girls to pursue STEM fields through 3 core programs, which I will definitely ask about later on because that sounds really interesting. Outside of work and running a nonprofit, Caeley is continuing to advance her education by pursuing her MS in Space Systems Engineering part-time at Johns Hopkins University. Yeah, let's get started.
Sure.
So Caeley, how did you get into the STEM field? And if there's anything else that you kind of want to talk about, go right ahead.
Yeah, so just to kind of add on onto the bio, so you hit on, I think, a lot of the core things. So first and foremost, I consider myself an aerospace engineer or a woman in STEM. Like you said, I got my bachelor's in aerospace engineering with my concentration in astro, which means all things space. I got super into attitude, determination, and control stuff, which kind of landed me in the satellite arena. Happy to talk more about that. But ultimately ended up becoming an aerospace engineer or a space mission analyst, or I think my actual official title is astrodynamics engineer at L3Harris Technologies. I support all of their small satellite programs, some in space, some not in space, some that aren't even like a satellite yet. So I support kind of end-to-end with the life cycle. I'm also a founder and CEO. I did start my own nonprofit organization back in 2019, Reinvented Inc., which you talked about, and again, happy to answer more questions. And then the last thing that I'm kind of using to introduce myself with this year is Maker. I have always been, I think, a creative person. I've loved getting creative and building these big projects, even like since I was little. And when I became an engineer, I feel like that was a big part of myself that I lost because I thought that everything was very cookie cutter, very black and white, that you could not kind of be artistic and creative and fun and also be math and engineer loving at the same time. And so I kind of got rid of that part of who I was up until last year, where I kind of realized after talking to makers that these things actually go really hand in hand. And so I started getting back into doing fun maker projects. I did something last year called my Summer of Making. The picture you see there is actually an origami kayak that I made out of plastic sheets. So I made that kayak that I'm sitting in. And so, yeah, so those are kind of the 3 things that I use to define myself. But yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, and we'll definitely get more into detail about all these 3 points. So yeah. So we kind of want to go through your timeline and kind of how you got interested in STEM and all that. So if you could just like go through this, that would be super interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So that first picture there, if you want to maybe circle it with your mouse, it's that picture of me in a, I don't even know, a tutu with what looks like feathers in it and a wand, and there's a crown on my head. That was the kind of dork I was growing up, 100%. That was me being able to dress myself. And if you ask my mom, she will. There was a good reason why she dressed me pretty much all the way through my elementary school days. It's because if I could, I would go to school looking like that every day. And so I grew up wanting to be a fashion designer. As you could tell, like I feel like I had a pretty good knack for sensing what was in style. I think that's like a reindeer on my shirt. So it was like great. And I kind of was quickly told like maybe that was not the right career path for me, and I still was set on kind of being a fashion designer up until I got to elementary school, or up until I got to middle school. I was doing Girl Scouts all this time. In elementary school at the time there weren't many like STEM badges, so we were doing a lot of arts and crafts type badges, and then middle school hit, and that's when I got to actually do a little bit more exploring and stuff in math and STEM and science. And so that second picture there is a little bit way later in my timeline, where I actually got to do a fireside chat with Sylvia Acevedo, who was the Girl Scouts CEO a couple years ago. But I joined Girl Scouts, back in kindergarten, and in 6th grade, Girl Scouts is really what changed my life. So going on to the next slide, I joined an all-girls Girl Scout first robotics team. So it was through Girl Scouts that I found out what first. I'm so sorry, a piece of paper just fell and my dog just like jumped. It's okay. It was a piece of paper. Okay, I'll backtrack a little bit. I'm so sorry. Can you just sit down now, Charles? Like just chill. You're good. I promise. He doesn't want to sit down now. He's like too scared. He's like, will it eat me? No, it's a piece of paper. The fan just blew it off. Okay, I think he's okay. I'll talk about him in a second too. Yeah, so in 6th grade, I joined a first robotics team, and that is truly what sparked my passion for science, technology, engineering. It was kind of the first time where I got to get hands-on with STEM. It wasn't just kind of this concept I was sort of learning about and doing multiplication tables in school. I was actually getting to physically build and code robots, and the whole logic behind it really was just kind of a crazy concept to me, and I wanted to keep learning more and more. So I ended up getting really into the coding side rather than the mechanical side, which brought me to winning the NC-WIT Aspirations in Computing Award in my senior year of high school. If you've never heard of NC-WIT and you are a high school student, or if you're any kind of student, go look up NC-WIT. They're a phenomenal resource for girls in computing, coding, all things technology. They are a really awesome group of girls who share the similar passion of being in STEM. And when you win the award, you get to be able to be part of this community. But the award itself opens up so many doors in terms of internships and all that, and I can answer more questions. But 10 out of 10, go look up NC-WIT, because NC-WIT is on here for a reason. It was a huge milestone in my life, and it really is the support group that allowed me to kind of push through the rest of my journey every time I needed help or felt discouraged. So next one, I went to school. I decided to go to school for aerospace engineering. I thought space was really cool, and that was pretty much all it was to it. There wasn't like really some big inspirational moment that pushed me into space. I just thought that robots in space were cool. And it was at Embry-Riddle that I learned that I actually really loved the control side more than like the robotics or the mechanical or even just the coding side. I liked attitude control. And I ended up graduating with my bachelor's in aerospace engineering in May 2018. That's a picture of me and my mom there on my graduation day. But the semester before that, I got to work at NASA at Kennedy Space Center. So pictures slightly out of order there. But that was kind of the moment that I think made me really realize that I loved working on spacecraft. Up until then, when you going through the coursework at Embry-Riddle, you do a lot of everything. You learn about landers, you learn about robots, you learn about propulsion, you learn about airplanes, you learn about rockets, you learn about satellites, you learn about all of these different things, and then you don't really get to do much practical application on any of them. And so NASA and working there in the Swampworks lab doing research on an asteroid landing spacecraft is what really kind of solidified my love for spacecrafts and made me want to stay more on the satellite side versus going and to a company like SpaceX or ULA where they launch rockets. And so I now work for L3Harris. I started working there also May 2018, just a couple of weeks after I graduated. Unfortunately, I can't really take many pictures at work because it's all kind of DoD government stuff. But I do have a service dog. His name is Charlie. That is his picture there. That is a picture of him under my desk at work. And so I figured that's what I could show you there. Then in 2019, I started Reinvented. We started as a magazine. We've now grown, like you said earlier, we have 3 core programs. Happy to kind of talk more about them later, but that's my executive team who was able to come down just a little while ago for the first time and meet in person, which is really cool. But Reinvented and starting Reinvented was kind of this big journey on its own that really sparked my newfound passion for kind of advocating and empowering other girls in STEM and trying to make their journeys a little bit easier than mine was. And then lastly is kind of that last milestone I talked about where I rediscovered my love for making and getting creative. That's yet another project that I worked on. The last few months was LED shoes and a light up purse that matched a dress that you saw, or we can kind of show on my front side if we want. But yeah, so that's my journey. I really was kind of an oddball. I feel like I know more women that start their journeys later in life or kind of don't stumble upon STEM until high school. I got really, really lucky. My mom and dad were both engineers. So when they quickly realized fashion was not going to work out for me, they were quick to throw me in like the STEM pool and help me like learn to swim in there. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was a super amazing, I guess, kind of brief timeline, but really helpful, and it's a good I think it definitely adds on to your introduction. I feel like there's a lot of places that we can start. So is there any like specific place you want to start, like, or I definitely have a tons of questions
Oh
after.
yeah, just go for it.
Okay, yeah. So first of all, kind of like I always kind of viewed Girl Scouts as kind of okay, this is probably like from a very overview peripheral perspective, but like selling cookies is my first thought. So how
Yeah.
does Girl Scouts kind of relate to how you got interested or more in depth into STEM? And also, would you encourage girls to get into Girl Scouts? So yeah.
Yeah, so I 100%. I think that for a very long time, Girl Scouts was all about the cookies, pretty much. I think Sylvia Acevedo, who, if you didn't know, is actually a former rocket scientist. She worked at, I think it was NASA, but she's a rocket scientist. She was the one that brought in a lot of these STEM badges that do now exist. So nowadays, yes, 100% think that every girl should be joining Girl Scouts, because the number and like diversity of badge content that they have now is amazing. However, I will say that I don't think I had a very typical experience in Girl Scouts. I was like super lucky that my Girl Scout council was one of the few that won a grant from Motorola back then, to start a first robotics, division within our Girl Scout unit, or association. And I was even more lucky that my mom saw an ad for it in our Girl Scout newsletter and was like, yes, Caeley, you are going to be dragged to this meeting, whether or not you want to. And even more lucky that I fell in love with the robots after seeing them, kind of a thing. So like I said, I think that my journey with Girl Scouts was very untraditional. I think after I got to middle school and I joined the Girl Scouts robotics team, I went out of my way to make my experience in Girl Scouts very STEM heavy. If you don't do that, I'm not sure that you would have gotten the same experience. I think that there's way more opportunities to do that outside of robotics now, which is really exciting. But yeah, it was definitely different than I think most other Girl Scouts would tell you about their experiences growing up.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. I'm definitely have to look into that because I feel like that, yeah, that's kind of definitely altered my view on Girl Scouts, and I'll definitely kind of talk about, because I have a couple of friends that are in Girl Scouts and stuff, so I definitely will try to get their opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's very much so you get out of it what you put in, and you can like make your experience as like much of what you want as you want, if that makes sense. There's way more badges now. I think you need to have a really good like troop leader and a really good troop. But I very much so believe that there's like 1,000,001 badges to help you learn pretty much anything you want nowadays versus, when I grew up when, it was really more arts craftsy and cookies. But yeah.
Yeah, so you would say that, Girl Scouts is definitely a place for girls to kind of have freedom to decide kind of what route they want to do, as well as like proactively from a young age kind of discover what they're interested in and kind of pursue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sounds cool. So I also have another question about kind of, you mentioned kind of early on that you were interested in STEM and maybe robotics. So how did you kind of narrow that down to kind of aerospace engineering?
Like I said, I'm a planner. Okay, like I plan my schedule out to like 5 minutes, like even down to the minute sometimes. Like you will see like my drive times down to the minute in my schedule, kind of like that's who I am. And so when I look back, like I think that it's so weird that I really made a decision to go into aerospace engineering truly simply because I thought space was cool. I knew I loved robotics. And when I got into high school, I had like a science research teacher who was like, did you know that they send robots underwater? And I was like, no, that's super cool. And I made an underwater ROV and I studied them and I hated it. So robots on land, great. Robots underwater, not so great. And then he was like, okay, well, if you really hate robots underwater, why don't you start learning about robots in space? And I thought it was so cool that robots existed in space. Like it just completely perplexed like my like 10th grade mind. And so I did, I looked into it and I started learning a little bit more about like, technology that goes into space. And that was, I mean, it was maybe a month's worth of looking things up, but it was just that 1 month of, realizing like, I think space is really cool. I think I can make a fun career out of learning about sending technology to space. And I did. It was like the one thing in my life I don't think like I spent much time planning, and it was kind of weird, but I think I'm cool with the decision I made. I love what I'm doing. So
Yeah, and this definitely kind of relates to my next question, which was, did you have your whole life planned out before college or not? But you kind of answered that. No.
yeah, no. I mean, I knew from 6th grade that I love STEM. Like I wanted to go into something STEM related. So I half yes, but half no. I don't think the space thing really hit me until it was pretty much time to start submitting applications to college. And then I was like, yep, space it is. Thanks. Thanks, Mom. This is good. Great. Thank you. And that was it. And I moved on and I, went to space school kind of a thing. Now I will tell you that like I feel like I had my life way more planned out when I was in high school than I do now. Now I feel like I'm an adult and I have no clue what I'm doing. So any adult that tells you that like they have it all figured out is a complete liar. Do not believe them. But yeah, I feel absolutely like had more of a plan back then than I do now.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely reassuring, because sometimes like I listen to adults and they're like, I got everything handled. I'm like totally in control. I'm like,
No, I feel like less and less control. I think the older I get, and like I feel like I know less and less with every like year. So
yeah, I think
yeah, you're all good.
yeah, I think that's definitely like the learning process, because I think once you get older with like more freedom, as well as like with like I guess more like learning experiences and opportunities, it's just you realize the world is really big. At least in my humble.
Yeah, it is very big.
Yeah. And so kind of adding on to that, what advice would you give to high school students going to college, not knowing exactly what they want to get into, or not kind of having a clear path ahead of them?
Sure. You want to go to my 4th slide?
Yeah.
So I usually tell students 3 things. My number one, and this is something that I probably would never have told someone as a high school student, but absolutely believe in now looking back, is to be yourself. I touched on it earlier. I feel like I gave up a huge part of who I was. I used to be really into art and photography and design and being like doing these big elaborate projects. And when I chose engineering, a lot of that went to the wayside because I really just thought that it had to be one or the other. And I think that especially in STEM, being yourself is something that a lot of women don't feel they can do. Even just outside of the creativity, even just in the like what you look like and what you're wearing, you kind of conform to your work setting. And so I really like telling, especially like female students who are looking to go into STEM, to be yourself, to not be afraid to wear the loud pink colors, to not be afraid to find something or a career that really does mesh, every single one of your passions, because there's so much in technology and STEM that you really could be doing everything that you want to be doing. So don't limit yourself. Don't put yourself in a box that like you really don't belong in. No person really belongs in a box, right? So be yourself. My second one is to always try new things. I know that this isn't really always for everyone, and it definitely wasn't for me for quite a long time. I'm not a creature that loves change at all. But I really do believe that trying new things, saying yes as often as possible, and constantly trying to learn something new is really important, especially in the STEM space. It's not only something that looks really good on your resume as you start applying for internships and things, all the projects that you work on, but I think you, again, learn a lot about yourself by trying new things. I don't think I would have ever known that I wanted to do space, or that I wanted to do something with spacecrafts, or that I really liked attitude control, or really like honed down on like what my true like passion was in the space field, without putting myself out there and trying new things. And then my last one, I think, is what people often find to be the hardest thing, and that's to ask for help. I think that a lot of times women in STEM are viewed as weak or lesser than, which is absolutely ridiculous. But because of that, we often feel like we have to be stronger or braver or smarter than we actually are. even though we're probably already the smartest person in class, kind of a thing. And so I always say you have this huge community of other women in STEM. I mean, myself included. I talked about NC-WIT. There are a million other Facebook groups alone that, you know, are support systems, let alone like college campuses and after school clubs. But I promise you that there will always be someone who is willing to provide help. You just have to ask for it. And this is anything, whether it's life, STEM, or, you know, a boy in class makes a really mean comment about being a woman in STEM and you're feeling discouraged, which has happened to me way more than once. And every time I go and I ask someone for help because I know that I love STEM. And I just need a little bit of extra encouragement. So whatever it is, I always encourage students to not be shy, put yourselves out there, and come find us, other women in STEM. We want to help you. You just, like I said, you just have to ask.
Okay, yeah, that's really great advice. And I'm at the period because I'm also kind of interested in a lot of STEM fields. So definitely also advice that I should take.
Yeah, you should be doing the try new things.
Yeah. And also, again, I agree with like my personality is like, I don't like change. So trying new things was definitely kind of a like directed toward me sort of thing where I'm like, oh, yep, should definitely be trying new things. So yeah.
No, I feel you. I don't like change. I really don't like trying new things. However, when I look back, I think that all of my memorable or like redefining moments in STEM are when like I said yes to the crazy things like traveling to a hackathon or you know, taking an opportunity to go to a code camp or, you know, taking an internship or applying for an internship that I never thought I would have gotten at NASA, kind of a thing. But you literally like you won't learn anything about yourself and you won't achieve anything unless you try new things. And that's that I think is the line to remember versus the do things that are like outside of your comfort zone, because that sounds scary, right? But if you think about it more of as like, I'm going to learn things about myself, I'm going to learn new things, and I'm going to achieve great things as a result of this, it makes it seem like slightly less scary. Not much more, but like slightly less.
Yeah, and a little bit more positive than
right.
yeah. And so from these kind of advice, it seems that you faced some sort of adversity as a woman in STEM. So if you could talk about that a little bit more, maybe give an example, and how have you overcome them, that would be great.
Sure. So maybe start on like the more serious note. So I mean, for me, mental illness has always been a really big struggle, especially when I got to college. I think I've always known that I've had things like ADHD and anxiety and depression that kind of came from that, especially, you know, in high school when it came to like taking tests. But when I got to college, and again, I was outside of my comfort zone, all of that kind of was amplified tenfold. And I ended up in the hospital a few times during my college experience because of my mental health, and often because of the, you know, stress of the imposter syndrome that you feel as a woman in STEM put on top of the mental illness. And so that's actually why I have Charlie. I have a panic disorder. And so Charlie is my service dog specifically for my panic disorder and my anxiety disorders. When it comes to overcoming that, I mean, mental illness is its own kind of beast, but the imposter syndrome that built into that, like I said, I think having a really solid support group, knowing the people who, when you are, you know, crying or having a bad day, will always be the people that have your shoulder to cry on. For me, before I found my group at college, that was my mom. And so every time I had a bad day, I'd call her up. We're like very close, like bestest buds. And her advice to me then was always go make yourself a cup of tea. The tea will make it all better. And I promise you, it pretty much always did. And that's still my advice now. And I'm not sure that like it's the tea that really made it feel better, more so knowing that I had somebody standing in my corner and that, you know, I was taking a moment to myself to just breathe and reflect and remind myself why I wanted to be where I was and why I deserved to be where I was. Or when I couldn't remind myself, I had someone else who could tell me that I deserved to be where I was, because sometimes you really do need that outside voice. I think other than that, I always want to make sure that I'm honest, right, with people who are aspiring to be like, you know, women in STEM. It's not always easy. You will always, like, I can almost promise you that you will have a professor as you like get up, especially as you get through college, that truly believes that because you're a woman, you do not deserve to be in their classroom. I had a couple of those, more than one. People who truly, like, when I would try to go to office hours and ask for help, they pretty much were just like, why are you here? Like, you're not going to pass this class no matter how hard you try. And I mean, imposter syndrome and like feeling that you don't deserve to be there is one thing, and being outright told that you don't deserve to be in the space you're trying to be in is another. And again, I think I just point back to the support system. I also think that it's really important to write things down. For me, it's always better to look at things, or if you're a fan of Parks and Rec, Leslie Knope often leaves voicemails for herself, or like will call herself so that she can like hear herself, like give herself like positive affirmations about like how great she is. It sounds weird, but do those things, write them down, write down like how much you love, STEM, why you think that you should be there, all of the things that like, are positive and like make you believe that you deserve to be where you are, and then keep it somewhere safe, and make sure you write it when you're in a good space, and like maybe after you've had like a really good cup of coffee, or you're just like having a good day. You don't want to be in a negative space when you write down any of these things, and just kind of keep it in your desk and have it ready anytime like you start to doubt why you're there, and you don't have a friend to kind of go to and talk about it. So yeah, I think those would be my challenges and how to overcome them. I will admit, I think that a lot of those things are pretty standard for women in STEM. I think my story is probably the same one that you'll hear from a lot of other women in STEM. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I started Reinvented, was because I didn't want everyone's journeys to be as challenging as mine. I wanted to reinvent the space.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story, and I'm sure it's helpful to a lot of up and coming women in STEM as well as me. So you kind of in the end kind of mentioned Reinvented Magazine, so I would love to go more in detail into that. So I guess first question, to kind of introduce the magazine, how did you come up with it and feel the need to found this nonprofit?
Yeah, so I call myself an accidental founder, and I can explain that a little bit more. So I grew up reading 17 magazine. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's like a teen girls fashion magazine. It does a lot of like who's the hottest guy of the summer, or it did. I think it's changed since then. Fashion spreads, makeup spreads, all that kind of stuff. Well, I was a woman in engineering, and at the time I wasn't doing the whole be yourself thing. But I mean, teens fashion magazines don't exactly talk about rocket launches, or the accomplishments of women in STEM, or pretty much anything that I like wanted to read about once I had graduated from college and was having like self-care days. And so I complained in one of the Women in STEM Facebook groups I'm a part of, was just like, why doesn't a magazine for like people like us exist? And it truly at the time was just a complaint. One of those like things that you dump on the internet at 10 p.m. and then you wake up the next day. And like usually by then it's been forgotten, and that's all it was. But no. I woke up the next morning, someone had started a Discord server. There was like 300 comments and like a bajillion reactions on this thing. And when I joined the Discord server, they were like, okay, Caeley, we're ready. Let's make this magazine. And I was like, okay. And we did it. That was like I said, I really think I'm an accidental founder. And that probably doesn't give myself all the credit that I deserve. I mean, the actual founding of the organization was an accident, but there was so much work that went into it after that to make it a reality. But yeah, it was not something I intended on doing at the time, but I am really glad that I did.
Yeah, and I think it's also really interesting that like, you kind of just said this, not really off the cuff, but like almost spontaneously, like you said, at like 10 p.m. or something. And then like so many people reacted to it because they also kind of had maybe similar experiences or kind of
Right.
like, yeah. So, that's.
Well, I mean, especially like I said, I mean, this was a couple years ago, I think, before people like Amanda Gorman were put on the covers of magazines, right? It was mostly fashion icons or pop stars or whatever, people that women in STEM don't really look up to, right? And so posting in a group of women in STEM who I think resonated with the fact that like they also don't read magazines for the same reason. But I don't think I really realized like how much of like a need it was until I posted and saw so many people were like interested to ready to like back the idea.
Yeah, for sure. And so kind of we briefly talked about kind of what Reinvented Magazine does, but can you go more in detail into that and also maybe talk about the 3 core programs?
Sure. Yeah. So you want to go up 2 slides really quick because I think one of the pictures on that slide will be helpful for one of the programs. So we have 3 core programs. So our first one is Reinvented Magazine. That's pretty much how we started, right? We print a quarterly magazine that showcases and highlights the stories of professional, and we have students sometimes, women in STEM. It also has like a science experiment or maker project tutorial at the end of every issue. And then we do like a big cover feature on a more notable or kind of influencing woman in STEM, like Raven, the science maven. We have Naomi Thomas, who's like a professional model, and a woman in STEM and a founder on our next cover. Our second program ties into the 1-for-1 program. When we started Reinvented, one of my things that I felt really strongly about was accessibility. And so that's one of the words that we really keep at our core. And so what that means to us is making sure that our content is accessible to everyone, that our role models are accessible to everyone, especially girls in low income and underserved or rural communities where you typically wouldn't be able to afford a print magazine or access a digital copy because you don't have access to the internet or you can't afford to have a computer at home. And so we work with Title I schools, libraries in low income neighborhoods, and other nonprofits to donate physical or print copies of our magazine to these girls. And they're really the ones that help us get the magazines into their hands. The third one is Princesses with Power Tools. And so that's why I brought up this picture here. The picture of me in a belle dress is pretty much what our princess program is. We dress our volunteers up as princesses. We go out to events all over the country. Usually it's maker fairs or STEM expos, things like that. And we show anybody who wants to visit our booth. As you can imagine, it's typically little girls who are attracted by the princess dresses, how to use their first power tool. We do a whole lesson, within 5 minutes pretty much on how to use a powered hand drill. And then they make their own constellation projectors using the hand drill that they take home with them. And then because of COVID and all of that, we couldn't do the programs over the last 2 years, or not up until I guess the end of last year. So we started a calendar. And that's where that picture was from. So I got a more professional, more like large ball gown that like was more photogenic than the one, my belle dress that I bring to my like in-person events. I got all of my textbooks together, so you really can't see it, but like the top one, you can see like the integral sign. That was like one of my calculus books. Together, and like I grabbed my laptop since that's like my main power tool at work. And we do a photo shoot of 12 princesses, one for each month, each doing their job with a power tool in hand in a princess gown.
Yeah, that all sounds super fun. I've definitely looked at like the website and stuff, and kind of like the main thing that I've like looked at is like the magazine, but I definitely will check out the other 2 programs.
Yeah, I don't know if our princess directory is up on the website, but we do have like a form where you can sign up to be a part of our princess directory. And if we come to an event in your area, and you're on like and you're signed up for our directory, we will like reach out to you to see if you want to volunteer at our events as a princess. We will provide you with a princess gown, feed you lunch and all of that, teach you how to use a power tool if you've never used one before. We've had plenty of princesses who volunteered who like learned the morning of, so don't shy away from it. And you come out and you help us out. It is a super, super fun experience. Like you have absolutely no clue, like the spark in like kids' eyes when like they walk away and they're like, I made this with the tool, Mom. I'm like, I can't. And it's always like the dads who are like, oh my God, I never thought that like my 5-year-old could do this. Now I'm gonna make her put up all the bookshelves next time. And
yeah,
like, it's just like it's perfect.
So adorable. That's just so cute. Yeah,
it really is. And it really is funny. I think when moms come up to our booth, they have so much confidence in their daughters. And I love it. They will let their daughter like come up, do the tool, and they'll just like wander away. and let us do the work, and they come back and they're like, proud of their kid when they see what they've done. Dads, on the other hand, always come up and they're like super hesitant. They're like, are you sure that you like you're gonna be good? Like my daughter can do this? We're like, yeah, we got this. And then by the time, like every single one, it's the same line. I'm gonna make my daughter put up the bookshelves next time. Every time. Every time.
Yeah, that sounds super fun. Yeah, I'll definitely see if there's any kind of events.
Yeah, I can send you the link to the Princess Directory too, so
Yeah.
that you can kind of include it and help us spread the word. But yeah, we're always looking for princesses. We have so many events planned for 2022 already. So
yeah, sounds super exciting. And so kind of talking about it, kind of I see like a lot of times, for example, this like princess program, it seems like there's kind of you kind of want girls to be able to kind of wear princess crowns and feel girly and stuff, but at the same time get interested into STEM. So what advice would you in general give girls that are interested in STEM, but at the same time kind of want to pursue maybe more kind of artistic sides, or like, for example, for you, kind of come back to becoming a maker or creator? And
yeah, so there are a million and one things that you can do in STEM. Like every single company needs someone in STEM. So even if like you want to work at a creative company, but you don't want to do the creative stuff, that's totally an option. If you are creative and you want to do the creative stuff, there's also a million and one options there. I usually point people to things like front-end development or web development, graphic design. Those are all things that are STEM, but have kind of the artistic twist on them. Or go look up some makers on Instagram. They get to do really cool stuff. I always suggest Stephanie, Zyla Foxlin, Ruth Amos. Yeah, I could probably list a million makers. Geeky Faye is one of my personal favorites. She does a ton of art and 3D printing. She's taking like a ceramics course right now, so she can learn how to mix ceramics and 3D printing. Or if you're anything like me and you're super into fashion design, go look up a designer called Anouk. She does robotics and fashion and 3D printing. She's very cool, very, very cool. And she's based, I think, she does a lot out of Miami, which is why I love her so much, because she's here in Florida. But she's super cool. So I want to come back to the whole be yourself. There are a million careers out there that you can find something that combines all of your passions. And two, try new things. Go find people, especially like now that Instagram's like this huge blowing up thing, and like reels, like you can like see more than just a picture and like actually get to do a little bit more of a deep dive into like what makers are doing. Go look up people who are doing things that you want to be doing. Like see if that's actually something you're interested in, and even reach out if you're not feeling too shy. I know that most of the people I just named would be happy to have a conversation with you. So yeah, I think those would be my suggestions, is find something that meets what you're looking for, because I promise you there is something, and then look for people doing it and see if it's actually what you want to do.
Yeah, really great advice. And with that, is there anything else that you kind of want to end on, or kind of yeah?
So maybe I'll do a quick plug for Reinvented. Would love for everybody to go show Reinvented some love on social media, especially on our Instagram. We're always looking for volunteers. Like I said, we're always looking for princesses. So if the princess program sounded cool to you, definitely go sign up for our princess directory. But yeah, I think that I've shared all my advice. I have no more wisdom to give right now.
No, that was great. Yeah. And I'm taking all that advice. It's just like,
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll stop sharing now. And we'll just end with some rapid fire questions.
Okay. I'm ready.
Yeah, let's go. Okay. So, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Yes, I have a few. However, my favorite one right now is I would like to get my L1 rocket certification. If you are interested in doing that as well, go look up Hot Nozzle Summer, and you will get like a million and one like different things on how to also get an L1 rocket certification with me. Promise it'll be fun.
Okay, yeah, sounds really fun. Yeah. And also, what would be one new thing that you would like to try this year?
Oh, so let's go back to my binge watching. I got my booster shot over the break as well. Knocked me out. So I rewatched Avatar: The Last Airbender like in the course of 2 days. Yep. Anyway, it was about 10 p.m. because you know that me at 10 p.m. comes up with the crazy ideas, right? When I saw the episode where Sokka finds himself a master swordsman and then makes his own sword.
I love that
naturally, yeah. So naturally now on my bucket list for this year is learning how to make my own sword as well. I'm hoping to do it in February. I found a local forge and everything.
Wow, that sounds really cool. Yeah, I am obsessed with Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is my childhood. It's my childhood. So yeah, anything about that I can talk for hours, but maybe I should go find a random like forge place.
But yeah, you absolutely should. I really also want to learn how to make the Kyoshi Warrior fans, but I think it's probably like way more advanced for like a starter blacksmith class. So I'm gonna stick with the basic sword first, and then maybe work my way up from there. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, that sounds fun. And also, would you rather have an opportunity to meet Frosty Snowman or Rudolph?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. I feel like I gotta go with Frosty the Snowman. He seems wise. Like he kind of like gives off like an Uncle Iroh kind of vibe, you know?
Oh yeah.
And like I feel like I could probably use some Frosty the Snowman wisdom.
Yeah.
I bet Rudolph could give you a good lesson on how to like be yourself.
Yeah. And then lastly, winter or summer?
Winter. I live in Florida, so it's summer all year round. I miss the snow. I'm originally from New York. I don't miss like plowing or like shoveling snow, but I miss like experiencing snow. So winter.
Yeah.
I don't want more heat.
Yeah, same. I live like it was really strange because where I live right now, it's like, well, the past few days it's been like 70s, and that's super rare because it's usually like in the 40s, 30s, and I'm like, okay, I really want that winter kind of weather.
Yeah, it's been like 80s here.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah.
Florida doesn't participate in any season but summer. And then like there's 1 week like where it's fall. Like 1 week.
1 week, yeah. And that's what you guys
We've experienced that week already too. It was like just before Christmas. Mm-hmm. So that's it. It's summer until next December, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we can end with that. And I had an incredible time talking to you and kind of getting to know your story, as well as Reinvented Magazine and everything else. So yeah, and thank you to all the viewers who have been listening in or watching, and shout out to Intermerge. You can find us on intermerge.org or Instagram on Intermerge INTL, short for international. And yeah, thanks again, Caeley, for coming in and talking about your story. And I hope to see all of you in the next Fireside. Bye. Thank you.